patient. There's a big TV screen in the front, and that's who we talk to here, and we're on right now. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting of December 19, 2018. The first item on the agenda is the roll call.
Mark Hansen,
Here.
Brad Seeloff,
Present.
David Kondrick,
Okay.
Leroy Oquist,
Sure.
David Oswald.
Here.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes of October 17, 2018. Is there a motion to accept the minutes as submitted by staff?
So moved.
Second.
We have a 1 and a 2 on that. All those in favor of acceptance of those minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's a public hearing in two parts, actually. The first part is a consideration of a plat, PS 1805 by Fridley Investments LLC to replat the property generally located at 6431 University Avenue to create new lots for a development. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
One motion and a second. All those in favor of that idea signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. Stacy.
I'm going to have you open the other public hearing too tonight.
Oh, you don't have to get mad at me. I was just.
I'm not mad.
You don't gotta get mad. I was just.
I'm not mad at all.
Yeah, you get mad, you get sore, but,
I'm not sore.
okay. Let's have another one too. Another public hearing will be consideration of a master plan, MP 1801 by Fridley Investments LLC for an S2 master plan amendment to allow the redevelopment of the existing city hall property generally located at 6431 University Avenue. The redevelopment of this property will allow for the construction of a 135-unit senior living building.
I'll move that.
Are we gonna move that?
Yeah, I'll move it.
Okay, we've been moved.
Okay.
We're moved on this deal.
Second.
All those in favor of that movement, signify by saying aye.
He seconded it.
Oh,
Yeah.
did he second it?
You
Oh,
did.
yeah, he's quiet. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Now, are we ready to go? Thank you.
Chair Kondrick and the rest of the Planning Commission, tonight we have two public hearings, as you stated. The first is an S2 master plan, and the second is a plat request.
We can hardly hear you.
You're
Ann.
not coming through.
Close to it.
Okay, let's try this again.
That's better,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so the two land use items that we already discussed
Okay.
will be for the former City Hall property at 6431 University Avenue. And that property is currently zoned S2 redevelopment district. So any change, substantial change, does require that an amendment be done. Therefore, we have this request before you tonight. The petitioner is also seeking a plat to create new lots and lot descriptions for each portion of the new development. Along with the plat and master plan, the city is initiating a street vacation, and that will be to vacate a portion of the service drive from Formies Avenue north to Mississippi Street. And on the right-hand side, you'll see a diagram showing the location of the service drive that will be vacated. It's highlighted in yellow on your screen. There's two little pieces, one of 5th Street and one of Formies Avenue, that will also be vacated. They were just leftover pieces of land from the plat.
Sure.
So we're cleaning that up right now. And you may remember that street and alley and easement vacations don't have to go before you anymore. They can just go straight to the council for their approval. But
Okay.
I wanted you to be aware of this just
Sure,
because
thank you.
it relates to the project. So over the last year, the city's HRA staff has been working with the petitioner on a potential redevelopment of the site. The petitioner states in his narrative that when Fairview, who operates the building adjacent to City Hall, heard that the City Hall was relocating, idea was formed to create a project on the property that included Ebenezer. And Ebenezer is the Senior Housing Division of Fairview Health Services. The petitioner feels that this would provide an exciting opportunity and a great place for seniors to thrive and connect with the neighboring Fairview service buildings. And just on the right-hand side of your screen is an aerial showing you the location of City Hall to Fairview. So to just go over the proposed project, like you stated, it is for the construction of a 135-unit senior living community. The building will be 4 stories tall with a pitched roof and underground parking garage. There'll be a mix of independent, assisted, and memory care suites, along with a variety of common amenity spaces, such as a 2-story lobby, a library, a multi-purpose community room, and a fitness center. The petitioner has designed the project considering the vacation of the University Avenue Service Drive, and that will give the project an additional 38 feet on the west side of the property. The new development will be accessed from Formies Avenue. I'm not sure if I can show you with my cursor here. Here's Formies. So the new development will take access to a parking lot, and then there'll be a covered canopy for dropping off residents. And then there'll also be an underground parking garage, and that will be accessed from 5th Street. Exactly where our underground parking deck is accessed now. So that won't change, because they're going to continue to use that access to get down to the underground parking underneath the proposed building. The former City Hall building and the adjacent parking ramp will be demolished as a part of this project. The existing garages and gun range that run along the northern property line, which is along here, are going to remain because the petitioner feels that they could use them for storage. And that area also serves as a retaining wall from the City Hall property to the property to the north. So along with the new building, there'll also be stormwater landscaping features constructed. This area where the service drive used to be will become green. So that's overall what will happen with the project. So when a property is zoned M2 redevelopment district, it does require that there is a master plan approved for the site. So when the site was originally rezoned to S2 redevelopment district in 1982, a master plan was approved at that time to allow the Civic buildings. And so since that use is changing, this master plan is before you tonight. The S2 zoning designation does allow flexibility with redevelopment of a project. The intent of this district is to provide the city with site plan review authority to determine if the project does meet the goals and objectives laid out in the comprehensive plan, and this project does do that. Review and recommendation is also required by the HRA. They have seen preliminary drawings of the proposed project, and they are expected to approve it at their January 3rd meeting. So as I stated earlier, 135 units. There'll be a mix of independent, assisted, and memory. Of those care units, there'll be a mix of studios, 1-bedrooms, 1-bedroom plus den, and then 2-bedroom apartments. The mix of independent and assisted living units can fluctuate, as generally a senior might move into the facility as an independent and then age into needing more services, so therefore needing an assisted living suite. But the petitioner also states that there is flexibility. So if somebody moves into their independent suite but now they need services, they don't have to move to another unit. They could stay within their existing unit. So because of that, that does kind of create some confusion with parking. Like, how do we exactly figure out parking if, you know, an independent unit becomes an assisted unit, because the parking ratio is different. But we did our best to figure out exactly how the units will be laid out and what the parking ratio should be. And so based on that number, city code would require 90 parking stalls for this use based on the independent assisted and memory care units. Of those 90 stalls, code requires that 29 of them be enclosed. And the petitioner is providing 134 stalls, so more than what code requires. So of those 134 stalls, 91 will be in the underground garage. 43 will be surface stalls in that parking lot that's accessed off of Four East Avenue. And then the plat analysis, fairly straightforward. In order to allow for redevelopment of the site, the petitioner would like to create 3 new lots for each portion of the development. The parcel highlighted in blue is where the senior housing development will be located, and that's 2.67 acres in size. Lot 2 is highlighted in red, and that's for potential further redevelopment. That's currently where our parking deck is. That lot will be 1.14 acres after it's platted. And then lot 3 in yellow is where the existing parking lot is for the Fairview building that exists there today. And that parcel won't be part of this replat. So this right here, there's a office building and a Fairview Clinic building, and that lot isn't part of this replat. So with that, staff does recommend approval of both the master plan and the plat. The master plan does meet the goals highlighted in our comp plan, and it also does provide additional senior housing with services opportunities within the community. Staff recommends that if the master plan is approved, the following stipulations be attached. Number 1, the petitioner shall develop, the property shall be developed in accordance with the site plan submitted for Fridley Senior Housing, page C2, by Civic Site Group dated December 7th of 2018. Number 2, the exterior building elevation shall be developed in accordance with the architectural exterior elevation sheet submitted by Cost Wilson Architects dated November 16th, 2018. The petitioners shall meet all requirements set forth by the building code, fire code, the city's engineering department, the city's planning department, and the Mississippi Watershed Management Organization. And number 4, if the square footage of the footprint of any of the buildings proposed change by more than 10% of that phase of the development, an S2 master plan amendment shall be required. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Stacy, in the colored maps that we provided here, the red portion, which would be the easterly portion of the property.
Yep.
Did you say that's going to be on top of the current garage?
So I was just saying that's the general location of it.
Okay.
But that will be demolished as part of this project.
Okay,
The parking garage.
And then a possible building could
Potentially
be placed
in
on
the
top of that.
future.
In the future.
Yep.
Okay.
So that's
Anybody
not,
else have any
that's
questions?
not included in this redevelopment
Not in this
No.
project then?
No.
We got a question on they're talking about keeping the gun range.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any type of remediation required for the lead that's in there? Do we have to do anything to that, or is that part of their plan, or?
Do you know the answer to that?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, our police department has been careful about analyzing how we leave that for the next users, and certainly it will be left in a state that is acceptable to be handed off to a new owner.
Okay, thank you.
Stacy, could you maybe comment on how the service road is going to be modified
Sure.
potentially? If that's going to be a separate project or done in a time frame that's concurrent with the development?
So all of those parts are still being worked out, but based on discussions I've had today with the HRA, it does seem like it's going to be a city project. Taking out the frontage road from Formies to Mississippi Street. So there will be no drive access at all. It will be green space and a new sidewalk. So people won't be able to use that frontage road at all. But we do expect that it would happen along the same timeline as construction of this development.
Is the same lovely chain link fence staying up there, or are they going to put something else along that stretch?
We hope not.
Yeah, okay.
Has the bank and the church been told of the destruction of the unavailability of the access road, so that their customers will have to find new accesses to their businesses?
Good question. For sure, the bank, we notify people within 350 feet of the property,
Yeah,
and the bank would be within that 350 feet. I'm
Okay.
not sure that St. Williams is
yeah,
within that
maybe they should be
350,
told, yeah.
but definitely we can give them notice.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any long-term plans to continue to vacate the right-of-way for the service road, or just to this property?
There isn't. I mean, originally we had discussions about, oh, should we vacate Formies with this project? You know, how can everybody still retain access? But this seemed like a good stopping point for now, until we see other redevelopment go on.
Okay, anyone else have any questions of staff regarding this idea?
So the city will own the red part here and the yellow part then, is that right?
On the plat drawing,
Yeah,
no, the developer will own,
because,
All of it.
okay, the developer will own all of this then?
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I see.
Is parking allowed on Formies currently?
No, I don't think so. It's a very narrow right-of-way.
Okay. I was just curious because when in my own personal experience going to these types of facilities, the lots that are available surface-wise fill up, but only on holidays. And then
Sure.
you see a lot of overflow on the adjacent side streets. So I was just curious if it was, parking was allowed there.
Mr. Chair, that is an excellent
Yes.
point, Commissioner. And one of the things that I think that is interesting about this site, and I think will remain, is the fact that there, I believe, will be a relationship between the neighbors here, and they can speak to that more accurately than I, but a relationship that I would expect that on those rare instances, like the holiday, we wouldn't want them to overpark by putting in for that rare instance, but instead maybe seek to have an arrangement so that in those times, they could use some of the parking that's adjacent, already existing.
Of the Fairview parking lot, for example.
And I don't want to speak for Fairview, but at the same time, I think that, I mean, we're finding, as we get smarter as planners, that we're trying to, you know, for stormwater reasons and all other reasons, we're trying to make some of these things happen where neighbors, adjacencies,
Yeah,
help one another out for those rare instances.
okay. Any further questions? Anybody? Okay. Who is the spokesperson for this group? Aye, that's you, huh? Why don't you come forward to the podium and tell us who you are and who you represent and what's on your mind?
All right, wonderful. Thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for having us here this evening. My name is Steve Dunbar, and I am the participant here for Fridley Investments LLC as the developer. And we have been working with the City of Fridley and the HRA for over a year now on trying to bring forward this effort. And the city and HRA has been wonderful to work with. Staff's been great. Stacy's done a great presentation on pulling this all together here. And so we're representing the team here tonight to answer any questions that you might have. We have representatives from Cass Wilson Architecture, Civil Site Group, Ebenezer, and Amcon Construction, if there are any questions that you might have specifically as we kind of go through this. But if we're able to move forward here, we're very excited about bringing this asset forward in the community to really serve a population that
Well, I think we'll
fits
be
well.
excited to have you here. You heard Ms. Stromberg talk about the stipulations. Have you folks any reservations regarding those stipulations? Are you in agreement with them?
We are in
Any
agreement.
problems?
Yes, and we have been in communication with Stacy in regards to those stipulations and are confident that we'll be able to.
And you're in full
provide all
agreement,
those.
are you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay. Does anybody have any questions regarding this gentleman? And he's got a bunch of people here. They look pretty smart. We'll find out.
Smarter than me, that's for sure. Yeah.
What's that?
Smarter than me. that's
Oh,
for
yeah,
sure,
you'd say that. Yeah. Yeah. The gal's got a gun there, yeah. Anybody have any questions of this gentleman? It's pretty straightforward.
It is straightforward.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna be lucky to have you folks here in our community, to be sure.
I have one, assuming this gets approved
Yes, sir.
and move forward, when do you anticipate start?
You know, the
Start-
goal right now, in working with city staff and the HRA, the goal would be to break ground this summer. Late spring, early summer is the goal, and
Okay.
then bringing it online, late summer, early fall of 2020.
Okay.
Really? Okay, good, good. Okay. You gonna advertise that kind of stuff so we can get this thing filled as soon as possible?
Absolutely. We
I'm
benefit
sure
from
you'll
filling
have
it
a lot
up
of,
soon as
you'll
well.
have a
so.
lot of interested people that wanna be there. that's for
Ebenezer will
sure.
do a great job promoting
Yeah,
it
yeah.
during the construction process and the pre-leasing. And
I have relatives that are already in some of your buildings, and it's,
Wonderful.
yeah, they're good buildings. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, commissioners.
Sure, thanks a lot. Anybody from the rest of your group have anything that you want to add to us this evening? Mum's the word, huh? Okay, you think he did a good job, do you? Okay. Yeah, okay. If there are no further, is there anybody else in the audience that would like to address us on this issue? No? Anybody else? Okay, if there is no one else there that would like to talk about this, motion would be appropriate to close the public hearing. If there's a motion to do that, say so.
So moved.
Second?
We got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. All those in favor of that idea signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. We've lived in that building, all of us, for quite a while. I know that building, I know the location, I know everything about it, and I think this is a lovely opportunity for our community
Right.
and for the people that are gonna be able to utilize it. I have no problem with this at all.
Yeah, like the rest of the housing projects that are going on in the city, that I would imagine it's gonna be filled quite quickly as
Pretty-
well.
Pretty
so.
damn quick, if you ask me. Be time to call a question. How do you guys feel about this? Anybody want to make a motion to go along with this?
No, we
This-
need two motions, right?
Yes.
Yes.
For both of them, okay. I'll make a motion to, consideration of the plat PS 1805, recommend to city council.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Got a motion and a second regarding the plat. All those in favor of that idea signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. What about the second thought here, the master plan?
I make a motion to accept the master plan MP 1801 as presented.
With the stipulations?
With the stipulations, yes.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go along with this idea here. All those in favor of that signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Ladies and gentlemen, this will come before the city council soon. Stacy, when will this happen? For the
January 7th.
January 7th, in this room, in those chairs if you like, but anyway, January 7th at 7 o'clock. Okay, take the elevator to the steps, that's how you get up here. Okay, this is all new to us, it's a new building here we've got here, and it's kind of fun being here. All you folks look prettier than I thought you would with this new, it must be this new room, I don't know.
The lighting is,
It's the lighting, not for the girls, but for the guys. Anyway, thanks for coming this evening, thanks for your project, thanks for the thoroughness that you presented to our city and for your future clients. It's gonna be great, we're lucky to have you. Thanks for coming. Okay, the next item on the agenda is some minutes approvals. The first item on the agenda is to approve the Park and Recreation Commission meeting minutes of October 1st, 2018. Is there a motion to accept them as submitted by staff?
So moved.
Second?
We have motion and a second. All those in favor of that signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the October 9th Environmental Quality and Energy Commission meeting minutes. Is there a motion to accept them?
So move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve them. All those in favor of that idea signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. The next is the September 6th, 2018 Housing and Redevelopment Authority Commission meeting minutes. Is there a motion to accept those minutes as given by staff?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second has been stated. All those in favor of that idea signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, that motion carries. And the last is the November 1st, 2018 Housing and Redevelopment Authority Commission meeting minutes. Is there a motion to accept those minutes as submitted by staff?
So moved.
Second.
There's been one and a two on that. All those in favor of acceptance of those minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, that motion carries. Other business.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, I would like to say that I'm very pleased to announce this evening that we have John Shardlow, Senior Principal at Stantec Consulting, to provide for us a discussion about probably one of the bigger questions that you get is, what about the future of the Girl Scout camp?
I get it at least 3-4 times a year.
Okay.
Really. People will call me at home and say, "Who's this John Charlo guy?"
Well, I must say, the Metropolitan Council has done a
I
very
don't
nice
want to
job.
know they put you in jail or what. I never could give a very good answer to that, but I'm glad you're here this evening.
I'll try and help you with it.
What's on your mind this evening?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I've realized that I'm what's staying between you and the last part of the last Planning Commission meeting of 2018, so I'll be relatively brief.
Okay.
I am here on behalf of the Metropolitan Council, but my role on this project is to really serve as a liaison between the Metropolitan Council and the city, trying to determine the future alternative uses for whatever portion of this property may be surplus from what the Metropolitan Council needs. Will I be able to see the monitor here, Stacy?
No, I think it's just up on,
So let me begin by just giving you some basic information about the property. What I'd like to do is just present kind of what I would call due diligence, just some basic understanding of what the development potential is of the property.
Okay.
Give you a little bit of preliminary information about what the Metropolitan Council needs on the property and sort of where that process lies. And then I'm going to just give you a couple of ideas, just a couple of alternatives, which are not by any means a proposal. So if anybody's listening at home and thinking that anything I'm presenting tonight is being proposed and they need to be concerned about it, that's not the case.
Good point. Good point to talk
And so
about.
we're really beginning a conversation tonight.
Okay.
So if I could have the next slide, please. So starting out, the Girl Scout property there is 22.04 acres. That's a good size infill property within the city. Next slide, please. So again, my purpose tonight is just to introduce myself to you and to this process so that we can have a common understanding of what the project is and also understand what its importance is to the region as well as what its importance is to the community. Talk a little bit about what the process will be going forward, and you certainly will have a role in deciding what that process should be in terms of when it should go to the community and how and what the sequence would be. We've already met with the staff and had a kickoff meeting and really made a commitment to have good, clear, ongoing communication so everybody knows how things are going. Again, just to share with you some basic site analysis from a land planner's perspective, what are the opportunities and constraints that this property presents, and then kind of talk about what the next steps are. So let's start with what's the importance of this from the regional standpoint. The lift station is part of a much larger regional drainage system. I'll show you a graphic in a minute. It represents a major regional investment in the regional wastewater treatment system. It's going to involve a major river crossing, which is always a big deal environmentally. And there are important design considerations, there are important operational and maintenance issues and safety issues, security, compatibility, and so forth. So whatever happens on the rest of the land, we need to know what the edges are going to be like and how it's going to be secured and how it's going to operate and what kind of a neighbor it would be and so forth.
Mr. Charlo, sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make a point of clarification. I happen to live across from the property, and it's our understanding that the lift station is going to move from the west side of the river to the east side. Is that what you're talking about in reference to the last slide? That
That's
the
what
lift
the major
station
river
will,
crossing is, yes.
is going to become part of this property?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
Thank you.
So this is a graphic that shows the drainage area for that lift station, and you can see that with those red gravity sewers, it drains a good portion of Coon Rapids and Brooklyn Park and Maple Grove and Anoka and into some of the developing communities beyond. So it is definitely a point of a convergence of a lot of wastewater in the region. Next slide, please. So this is from one of the very preliminary reports that was done about the development of this site. This is not the design for the facility. This is just a very preliminary look at it. And it identified a way of designing the property, and there will be a whole design process that will go forward. So what I wanted to do is just show you what the footprint of that is as in its current consideration.
Sure.
The company that I work for, Stantec Consulting, is under contract to actually do the design work for this facility, and we'll talk about how that process will kind of dovetail with this process as well.
Okay.
Next, please. So if you just look at the cross-hashed area, this is about 7 acres of the 22.04 acres. Again, that's not confirmed. We don't know if that's exactly what the footprint will be, but based on the preliminary study, that's what it seems like it can work like. So from a basic planning perspective, from having a conversation about potential use, that's what we're working with. Just recognizing, making sure everybody understands that's not set in concrete by any stretch at this point. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what its significance is to the city of Fridley. It's a river frontage property. It's got some very nice natural amenities within a fully developed community. While Fridley is a river city, there's no public access to the river. And the site is adjacent to 2 established single-family neighborhoods. I've been doing this for 41 years now. I've been involved in a lot of infill redevelopment sites, and there are adjacent neighbor issues, and then there are citywide issues. And so that's why at the end I say it's a politically sensitive decision-making process, because we need to be looking at this both from the standpoint of what kind of an immediate neighbor it will be, but also how could this property fit into a plan for the future of the city of Fridley that would be positive. So the other thing that I think is important to point out is that the fact that I'm here tonight and the fact that we're having this conversation is really the first time that's happened. The Metropolitan Council on Environmental Services hasn't really approached projects like this in the past. And I think in some ways that's a testimony to the people who are currently on the staff there who come from city perspective, they come from a city background. And so they wanted to really see if there was a way in which we could work more collaboratively through this process while recognizing that there clearly are distinct interests on both sides. The Metropolitan Council is responsible for the regional wastewater treatment system, and they need to do that well and responsibly and make sure that they plan and design and build and operate and maintain a facility that works. But they also want to be a good neighbor. And to the extent that there is surplus land here, they want to work with the city of Fridley to decide what's the best use for that property. Next, please. So, we look at what the existing land use is on the area, and it's shown as an institutional use, a future land use in the area. From the comprehensive plan that I've read, there's been, again, very conceptually, the showing where there would be the institutional use for the lift station, and then the suggestion that there would be some higher density residential and then potentially park. I'm going to show you some reasons why that probably won't be what happens, but that's what it currently shows. And with respect to the zoning, that will probably need to change through this process as well. So there's both a business transaction that will need to take place in the future. If the city has an interest in this property, there would need to be a way in which Metropolitan Council would arrange for the city to have control of it, then you're probably almost certainly going to need to go through a comprehensive plan amendment process and a rezoning, both of which are legislative actions on the part of the city. So for anybody, again, listening at home, this is not something that's going to happen quickly. Not only will there be community meetings and a lot of discussions, there will be public hearings along the way as well. Next, please. So let's turn from that to looking at kind of the development potential for the property. This is a graphic that shows the Mississippi River critical area, plan boundaries. And you can see the lighter yellow is the portion that's the river neighborhood district that's adjacent to, and then the portion that's separated from. Obviously, there's considerations here with respect to bluffs, bluff setbacks, density, scenic vistas, and so forth. So that's one of the things we need to take into consideration. Next, please. This is a summary of natural constraints. Maybe leave this on for a little bit so you can get a sense of what we're dealing with here. You can see the steep slopes all along the banks of the river. You can see the bluff line, the solid purple line that goes along there, and the 40-foot setback from the bluff. If you follow that yellow line, which represents areas of 12% slope or greater, you can see that there's a pretty substantial band of steep slopes that wraps around the eastern edge of the property as well, which would be a pretty significant constraint to try and plow through if one were to try and put a roadway access through that location. There'd be challenges for sight distances, for cars if there was an access there, and so forth. The other thing that's right in the middle of the site is a wetland. When we first looked at this property, we looked at the National Wetland Inventory, and there was a substantially larger footprint of the wetland. So we went out and had it delineated, and the footprint of the wetland actually shrunk a bit. But it's still right in the middle of the site with the steep slope constraints on one side, access limitations on the other, steep slopes and the other. And then you think about the 7 acres that needs to be protected at the side. So it's got relatively limited development potential, if that's what you would call it, with some real challenges in terms of access and circulation, not to mention grading and potential tree clearing. So to say that it's a complicated site would be an understatement. Next, please. It's also within the shoreland districts of both the Mississippi River and the lake to the east. Obviously, the one that's on the other side of the East River Road, that's going to be fairly easy to consider in terms of its relationship to that lake, but it's just another set of regulations that would need to be taken into account as if the development went forward on the property. So next slide, please. So if you think, again, very conceptually, if you were to develop this property with any sort of residential, we met with the staff and talked about, what might that be. And the suggestion was that there are some patio homes in the community that have been pretty popular, single level living, if you will, a housing choice that may be desirable to some folks in the community. And so we looked at where that could be. And you see the band there. I believe the next slide comes in with some dimensions. Again, we recognize and have recognized from the very beginning that this is right up against an existing established neighborhood. It's right up against the back lots of those homes. There's only 112 feet of depth, of lot depth there, to a 50-foot roadway. Now, again, you can start getting creative and talk about planned unit development and narrower streets and so forth and so on. And I think, if you were to pursue residential there, we'd probably want to roll up our sleeves and be as careful as possible about figuring out where the best trees are and how could we minimize grading and all of that. But just at the face of it, 112-foot depth is not a lot to work with. The other thing that is important to note is if you can see where we're taking the street in there for the loop road on the north end, that's plowing right through those steep slopes. And so, again, we're showing this as a cartoon, as kind of a diagram, as a point of discussion. As a land planner, I think I would probably rather stand in front of you and make a case for a longer cul-de-sac with some kind of emergency turnaround at the end of it, as opposed to a roadway system that would plow through those steep slopes and take those trees. The other thing that's important to note is trying to be as judicious as possible. We're still encroaching on that 7-acre parcel to the south. Just going around the edge of that wetland results in some encroachment. Again, we're not in a position right now to know how much land they actually need or whether that design for that facility could be adjusted to, take a little there and give a little somewhere else. That's all stuff that lies ahead of us, but I just point that out. There was some discussion that I read in some of the description of this in the comprehensive plan that talked about the idea of having a trail around the wetland. And so we've shown some boardwalk and shown some trail around the perimeter of the wetland. Also showed the idea of locating a small parking lot there. People could come to this area and park and perhaps take a canoe down to the river or a kayak. And so that's what you see there with that little yellow arrow. That's not going to be without some complication either. It's a steep ravine. It would need to be improved. Probably wouldn't be handicapped accessible, but even making it safe to walk and launch a canoe would take some doing. So that's just the idea of if you were to think about developing, and that represents and respects the 40-foot setback from the bluff. I know also that there's been some discussion in the past about a trail connection from the neighborhood, from the north and from the south. As of right now, the Metropolitan Council's concerned. They don't want to commit to say that they could accommodate a trail through their facility to the south. And if you think about it and think about the volume of water that's going to be going in there and the nature of that facility, you can understand where that's coming from. That isn't to say when you get into the design process that you couldn't figure something out. So again, that's one of those issues I'll just put out there, that if there were to be a trail to the south, that's going to be a significant design issue that would need to be worked out later in the process. And obviously, if you're going to make a trail connection to the north, you're going to have to go through, either through somebody's yard or between somebody's yard or something like that. So that would have to be figured out as well. So again, this is just information I'm giving you tonight. Next slide, please. The other option, this is showing that if you were to look at the Pulte housing product that was built in the community, this represents lot sizes that are commensurate with what they did. And I believe we show something like 10 of those patio lots in this area. Again, from a land planning perspective, you're single loading a roadway. You're only getting development on one side of the roadway, which is costly. You're going to have a road that probably will exceed the cul-de-sac length. So you'd need to be thinking about emergency turnaround and so forth. So those are things to be thinking about. We did again show the idea of a trail corridor around there. We showed the option of a trail corridor going to the north and finding an easement between those homes and out to connect to the broader neighborhood. And we did show and label a canoe launch in that location. There's nothing at all. I think we're showing a 20-car parking lot. That's not based on anything other than just speculation at this point. How many cars you would put there and so forth. We also identified an area that's one of the high points along that trail that could be improved for some kind of a lookout where people could walk there, go up and have some nice views of the river. And we also showed just some picnic tables that could be a place where people could go to picnic. The other issue that I want to put out there, just to be thinking about, is that this is a sanitary sewer lift station. And so odor control is an issue. One of the reasons why, not to mention the fact that the shape of the parcel and the size of the parcel south of the wetland is probably too small to develop efficiently. It would be right up against the edge of that lift station. And there will be odor suppression built into the design. And the engineers are much better at that than they used to be, but it isn't perfect. And we're pretty confident that by the time you got on the other side of the wetland that it wouldn't be a nuisance. But to put something right up against it, especially when you consider that the prevailing winds in the summer in Minnesota come from the south and the west to the north and east, that would be, to the south and east rather, that would be potentially problematic. So the next one, the next picture just says, what if you were to simply keep it in some kind of a park setting? And so this, again, shows a little bit larger parking lot, shows a trail all the way around it, shows the idea of maybe some informal trails through the property, but this would, of course, retain the vast majority, if not all, of the trees on the property. So go to the next slide. This is just showing a couple of ideas of, kind of some of the ways in which somebody might be able to pull a canoe or a kayak down. Again, this is not a design recommendation. We're just saying that's one of the uses that could be there. Next, please. And likewise, if you wanted to, there could be some kind of a picnic shelter or park building that could be there depending on how the community decided they wanted to program that space. Next, please. So, again, the purpose tonight is not to ask you to decide anything. It's just to give you information. In fact, I wouldn't recommend that you really, I think it's a good thing to just take in and think about for a while, and we'll figure out coming back, and you can talk to Scott and Stacy and see about what kind of other information you'd like to have, and we'll come back with it. I do want you to have an understanding of the fact that this site does have some significant constraints to it. Even if it were to be developed, it would be developed for a relatively small number of units, and with a pretty substantial amount of grading and site manipulation and tree loss. I'm a bit of a tree hugger myself, and I think this is one of those times in the history of the planet where we need as many trees as we can get. But I also recognize that there's value to providing a housing choice in the community that may not be there in the amount that you need. The relationship between the lift station and the adjacent development, obviously it needs to be a secure facility. If the community is going to be using it for park, or people are going to be living there or accessing it for recreational purposes, it's got to look good. It can't just be a chain link fence with barbed wire over the top of it. It's going to have to be designed with, a nice edge. And then we're going to have to be really open and sharing what we know about odor suppression as well. So, I'm happy to understand what questions you have. And one of those, as we talk with staff, is this is the first opportunity to really come before the community. The staff felt that coming to the Planning Commission was a good place to start that. Obviously, when we get into this process, people are going to want to know about. We're going to have community open houses, and the council will need to be involved and so forth. So how this actually goes forward is an important question as well. But let me give you just a couple of considerations, and then I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. Next slide, please, Stacy. So one of the things for everybody to take a deep breath about is that this thing isn't going to happen tomorrow. The plans are going to be designed over the course of this summer. That's the design of the facility itself. There probably will be an open house sometime in the fall of 2019 to talk about the design at the state it's at in 2019, which will not be the final state. The detailed engineering and design will go on between 2021 and 2022. And the construction, depending upon how the budget for this fits up with the budget for lots of other regional investments, could be any time between 2022 and 2025. So we've got some time to think about this, think about priorities, think about what's most important, and get it right. Next slide, please. So again, if any of these alternatives were to occur, there would need to be some form of subdivision, transfer of ownership, comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning. So one of the things for the city of Fridley to think about is this something that the city would want to control? Is this something that the city would want to own? Or would they simply want to ask the Metropolitan Council as their partners to protect it in some way or provide public access? And so again, my job is really to help the city understand what's possible so that the city can make informed decisions about what your interest is going forward. Next, please. So that's what I have for you tonight, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks for coming by, I appreciate it. This is the board. It's been a big chunk of property that many of us have been wondering about I lived in Fridley here for 40 years, and what the hell's going on over there? What are they gonna do with that? That kind of stuff. And a lot of my neighbors and friends have asked those questions too, and it's nice to know that some things are happening or possibilities are there for something.
Yep.
Appreciate that.
I had a couple questions.
Sure.
Could you comment a little bit about the size or why the part that's being broken off for the lift station? It seems like it's a pretty substantial part of that property. Does it need to be? I'm sure it does, but what's the rationale or the explanation for that? Or is it one building, two buildings, parking lot, et cetera, needed for that?
This is where I get to say I'm not an engineer, but it was based on a preliminary feasibility study that was done. And it's a function of how big does the tank need to be, how big does the pipe need to be coming into the tank, how much water does it need to hold, and all that sort of thing. So it's really just a function of capacity. And then there's a need for, some buildings, some monitoring equipment, some access, some roadway, some parking, and so forth. But that's all going to be looked at this summer by the folks who office on the other side of the hall from where I work. And so we'll definitely be engaged with the community throughout that process.
So you don't know how much structure will be constructed for this lift station that's
The
above
only thing I
ground?
know is that graphic I showed you, and that was based on a preliminary feasibility study done by a different engineering firm. That's what our company has been designed to take to the next step. So they looked at that, the Metropolitan Council looked at it. They decided that it was an important part of the regional infrastructure system, and they wanted to go forward with improving it. So now we're gonna be in the process of taking that very preliminary design and testing it, seeing if it can be improved and so forth. So, again, for the purpose of this conversation, our engineers were confident saying that that 7-acre site is probably approximately where that line will be. But we don't know anything more in terms of the details of that facility.
Well, they put that was a sanitary sewer line they put through, how many years ago? It wasn't too long ago, like 4 or 5 years ago, there was some construction going on
We
the
did a new
southern-
river crossing
Was
over
that a-
there. I think that was repairing an existing one.
Was that a repairing?
Yeah, that was an emergency repair, I understand.
Oh, okay.
I think however this site is developed, odor control is gonna be a huge.
It's gonna be a major
I
interest
mean,
too.
you're bringing a lift station that wasn't there before, and these things do smell. And
Yeah.
that's gonna have to be something that's going to have to be addressed. And may preclude or detract, well, certainly will detract from any potential other opportunities here. I mean, it's gonna be something that's really gonna have to be addressed by the Met Council.
One of the things that we committed to doing with the staff was identifying a handful of other facilities like this around the region and going to them and seeing them and talking to the staff and seeing what the experience is. There are people who, believe it or not, specialize in odor suppression, and we're under contract right now with the city of Minneapolis, going through the entire Minneapolis sanitary sewer system and figuring out ways to deal with odor control. So it's a lot better than it used to be, and there are people who live in pretty close proximity to these things and don't even know it. But I was one of the first to raise this issue, especially, I've attended something in excess of 6,000 public hearings, and so I've been to meetings where issues like this come up, and you don't want to rush to the conclusion that you can put houses right up against this and everything's going to be fine. It's definitely an issue that needs to be fully vetted and fully understood,
Sure,
and everybody needs to go into it with their eyes open.
yeah.
Okay, so why this location? Why is this, is it just because of where it's physically located at, or is it just because there's land available right there? I mean, why is this, have they keyed into this location for this station?
Yeah, again, I'm not here on behalf of the Metropolitan Council's
Okay.
engineers. I know that there's a lift station on the other side of the river that had issues that needed to be corrected, and I know that they needed to get into the gravity interceptor on this side of the river. And so they acquired this property for the purpose of building this facility, and so that's probably as good an answer as I can give you.
As part of the process, when you were looking at the trail connections, was there any discussion about putting a trail connection along East River Road to connect into whatever might be the developable portion of the property?
At this point, we haven't looked at anything other than just the basic ideas we were throwing out there, and again, that's why we want to come and talk to you about it as well. That, many of those major roadways throughout our region are being improved for bike trails and other trails, and if that makes sense in the context of your broader trail system, that'd be a really relatively simple thing to accommodate. Notwithstanding the fact that edge right along in the northeast there is very steep, so you'd be having to probably do some kind of retaining walls in order to make that happen.
Is Metropolitan Council acquiring all the land then?
It's my understanding that they have, yes,
All 22 acres?
yes. So I guess the question is, what's surplus and what happens with what's surplus? And that's what I've been hired to
Sure.
help you,
Yeah.
help them figure out.
And the decision is for sure that this lift station is gonna be on this side of the river.
Yes.
Anybody have any further questions of this gentleman? Anybody?
Not at this time.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of questions, I'm sure, that'll occur later on, as I'm sure that you're well aware of. You
Right.
know, a lot of things will be on our minds.
Well, I look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Mr. Charlo, thanks for
It'll be
coming on
interesting.
by and sharing with us.
Glad
We
you,
appreciate it.
glad you
Happy
came to
holidays.
give us that, this
Yeah.
information.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Boy, that was quite a load. Quite a load. We're gonna get it no matter what. Mhm. Yeah, we're gonna think about this for a while. I'm sure you folks are gonna have to think about it too. Yeah, yeah. Okay, is there anything else we should be talking about this evening?
I'm just gonna give you a quick, like, 4-slide presentation on what we've accomplished this year.
Lay it on us.
We
Okay.
did, huh?
Yeah.
Do it to us.
So what did we do in 2018? We reviewed 1 comprehensive plan amendment,
Okay.
0 lot splits, 1 S2 master plan amendment that was before you tonight, 5 plats, 3 rezonings, 3 special use permits, 2 text amendments, and 1 TOD master plan.
And no
for
partridge in a pear
total
tree.
of 16 items. Now, how has that compared to previous years? Well, we're up, actually, from where we were in 2016 and 17. So, at times it might seem like there's only an item here or there, but, I mean, generally, we've gone up from 11 and 12 to 16 items this year.
Most of the plats were commercial stuff, weren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, and then just some photos of some projects. They're not the best photos, but they're what I could get this week in December. So we had a plat approved to allow the development of the John Allen property at 5601 East River Road. And you can see the construction of those 2 industrial office warehouse buildings is pretty much complete. And boy, did those go up fast.
And they look beautiful.
Yes, we're very excited to see that land developed after all these
To
years.
see it utilized in a proper way after all these years.
Yeah. Pulte Homes, the patio homes, we had a plat to allow the construction of 26 new homes. 8 of them have sold. So we've been issuing lots of building permits over there. And then a new electronic billboard at Public Storage. You can see that it's up and ready for advertisements. One of the owners with Blue Ox was actually just in City Hall yesterday talking with our communications person to see how they can advertise for the city as well. So that was very nice of them. And then below that picture is the second phase of the Watermark Assisted Living will be happening next year. You'll see the first phase there on your screen. And then lastly, we approved a special use permit to allow an increase in lot coverage at the Ashley Furniture Store. And so there you'll see photos of their new canopy addition and then their new warehouse addition off of Industrial Boulevard. So there's lots of other things that have been going on in this community in 2018, but I just wanted to highlight a few things that you guys were involved in. And thank you for all your work this year, and wish you a happy holiday.
Well, thank you for yours.
Thank you for your work and thanks for the greetings. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
How many meetings did we have this year then?
I think we had 10.
10?
Yep.
How's the occupancy of that property that's over there on 694 and East River Road? Are they filling that up?
Oh, good question.
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, Stacy, if you don't mind, I'll take this one.
Sure.
The business along 694 and East River Road is fully occupied. Though you don't see the cars yet, Taylor Communications has leased that entire building. And they will have 300 employees there I think their lease really officially started on December 1st. And much like we did probably moving into this facility, they're moving from 3 different locations in the metro area and consolidating into this now very nice, brand-new facility. And those 300 employees will probably be moved in kind of shifts or phases. And I would expect in the first quarter of 2019, we'll see that front parking lot pretty well full. The developer tells us that they have very good activity on the second building. Not the owner of the site himself, but other developers say that it sounds like there's enough interest and activity that that building may be filled very, very quickly. So it's in a very attractive site in a very attractive location, and we think that they've done a very nice job.
Is there any conversations regarding access to those buildings? That the semaphore that's there and stuff, and the drive lanes and stuff, does the city foresee any access, ingress, egress, all those S's? Anybody have any problems with those, and what's being done about it if there are some?
Good. Excellent question, Chair Condrick. You'll not only see one, but you'll see 2 new signal lights on East River Road in 2019.
Oh, yeah,
You'll see the one right coming off from the highway at 694,
yeah.
and you'll see the one right at the intersection that enters this development. As part of this development, we certainly wanted them to take a look at not only providing the best opportunity to enter and exit this site, but also we wanted to make sure that this site was able to be accessed from pedestrians, from bicyclists who might be using this site to come to and from work, and the existing intersection really probably wasn't best designed for that. A new intersection that'll go in this year will have all the modern audible devices. It will be designed, it's in our TOD, it's going to be designed with colored pedestrian crossways so that it's very easy to see as a motorist traveling through that area. We're going to have a sidewalk that goes from this site
Oh, really?
all the way up to the train station site, so that folks can really be encouraged to take another mode of transportation, whether they're taking a bus and getting off and walking into the site. One of the things that you aren't seeing on this site yet physically, but is part of their landscape and development plan for the physical features outside, is a walkway that will take them from the intersection right out to that front building at 694 in East River Road. And there will be a sidewalk connection that if you're in that second building back, that will allow you again to be a pedestrian or a bicyclist and to be able to safely access that site.
Huh, okay.
So very, very good things there. Bigger than that though, the fact that this site is developed now, it's already started generating tax increment financing and an attractive amount of tax increment finance. As you know, that tax increment finance process allows us to basically put money in a fund that allows us to do other things. And you'll remember back that the legislature was very kind in allowing us to create a North Star specific tax increment district so that we could capitalize on that new increment, on those new dollars coming in, to put them back into infrastructure. You'll also remember that we're very, very interested in crossing the railroad track and connecting 57th Avenue. Right now, it is very disjointed, to say the least. Folks that live in Georgetown, for example, need to get on a highway and get off a highway to get to groceries, or they have to travel up to Mississippi. When we did the East River Road corridor study, the county, too, said that would be a priority because it would take traffic off the leg of Mississippi between University Avenue and East River Road. It would take traffic off from Mississippi down to 694. And the state, we believe, though they haven't been as vocal on this, would be very, very interested in taking off those short trips between University Avenue and East River Road that get on just to get off at an otherwise very, very busy part of the highway. So I I think you're gonna see a lot of good activity in this area. The fact that the legislature allowed that TIF district specific for infrastructure and the fact that we're generating increment now, we're very, very, very interested now in moving into the next phase of design and layout for that crossing. And continuing our work with Burlington Northern to assure that we get that done at some point here.
Cool. That's
Thank you.
good. It needs it.
It does.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it'll need, especially with 300 new workers there that gonna get there by hook or crook.
Yeah.
And probably by automobile in January, February, and March. So, yeah, that's good. That's good to hear. Mr. Taylor is happy with the progress of his buildings, is he?
Very. I think, and happy to be now business resident in the city of Fridley,
Yeah.
as he should
I
be.
would've thought he would've called me by now, but, you know,
Sit
they're
by the-
busy.
sit by the phone, I think
He's
it's-
busy.
it's
He's a
coming.
busy guy.
Yeah, he's
a
busy.
busy guy. Yeah, yeah.
Is there seen any interest in, with the northern stacks, and now that, I mean, East River Road, there's a lot of the development on each side of 694. Is there any, like, infrastructure support type of restaurants or hotels or anything? I mean, I don't know if there's any place to put any of these things, but because most of that's, you go over to university and what, but on East River Road, there's not a whole lot
Sure.
of that type of,
You know, very good question, Mr. Chair, Commissioner Oswald. I have to say that one of the things that we're hearing from citizens now, you know, for years, we heard a number of different things that were the upfront things that they would mention. Patio homes, as you know, was one of those things. More restaurants, I think, generally speaking, is something that we've heard throughout the course of time. But over on this side, you know, as we look at development over there, we look at a number of new jobs over there that weren't there in the not too distant past. We're finding a real interest.
Sure,
I
the
don't know
only
if-
way they can get into a restaurant from those buildings
Yes,
is to go back around and all the way over to university and do whatever you wanna do over there.
exactly right, Mr. Chair. And one of the most telling things, I think, recently, and Stacy and I have had the pleasure of being able to go and experience this, but there is a nice cafeteria in the BAE building down in the Paul Hyde development. And it is open to the public for lunch, and it's a treat. I think it's open for breakfast as well, as I recall. We've had a business breakfast there before, and it's very nice. But it is, because it's open to the public and it's over on that side, it's getting to be very, very busy. I mean, it
Yeah.
is, it's a
I
nice
would bet,
place.
yeah.
Test it out. You'll enjoy it. It's a nice place to go. And I think that, you know, we're still, our dream of that microbrewery is still alive and well there. And I think we're getting closer. Talking to the developer, I think that we're getting closer on the microbrewery that would happen there. And as far as another restaurant, certainly we wouldn't rule out, and there's nothing on the horizon right now, but other than in our master plan, you might remember, we talked about a restaurant somewhere over on that side that would capitalize on the fact that we've got a national river trail that runs
Sure.
through there. And some of those things that would make it really nice to be able to have a stop close to the river and close to some of that new
Sure.
excitement that's happening.
Yeah. I'd like to say one more thing before we go. One of the things that Stacy and I and you and I, Scott, have talked about is clarity. And what I mean by that is that from our commission point of view, to have people like yourselves that do a complete, efficient job of explaining what we're talking about, what's gonna go on those screens, and answering questions on the screen, and in your verbal presentation, so that the people in the audience don't have to ask questions that they are given the answers to. It saves your time, their time, and our time. And being a salesman as I was for almost 40 years, it's really important for me to be able to have my presentation to my customers be succinct and accurate and simple and straightforward and to the point. And you folks provide that information for us. And I want you to know that we appreciate that. It's very important.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chair. It's very nice to hear. Thank you.
Anyway, is there any other business, Stacy?
Nope, we're good.
Well, it might be important to motion to adjourn. Is there one to do that?
So moved.
Second?
We have a 1 and a 2 to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, Merry Christmas. Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you. and a
Merry
Happy New Year.
Christmas.